Hi, last week we talked about list tuples and dictionaries. Today we're going to talk about loops, conditional if statement, and functions. So to start about loops, there are two types of loops. We got the for loop and while loop. So we'll be starting the lesson with the while loop, and then we'll go to for loops because while loops are kind of easier to touch or start with. A while loop is a loop that has a condition. So until that condition is met, what we'll be doing is doing whatever that is beneath it or under it. So I'm going to say, for example, I'm going to define a variable I equals 0, and the condition I'm going to need is until I is smaller than 0. Okay, that's going to be my and I is smaller than 10. That's going to be my condition. So what I'm going to do is I need to print from 0 to 9. That's what I'm going to do. So the first value is 0, and the last value is going to be 9. And when I say I is smaller than 9, if I increment I by 1, and it will end at 9. Okay, so it's like if I increment at a step 1 by 1, I will be 0, 1, 2, and up to 9. So the while loop will be like this for it: while I is smaller than 10. Okay, this is the while, that's a keyword, and then we give the condition over here. The condition is I is smaller than 10, and we're going to tell what to do if the condition is true. So we enter. Remember to have the colon. If you don't have the colon, you'll be in trouble. It's going to be an error message, and we're going to tell what it has to do. We have to print I, and that's all we are going to do. And we need to increment this value by 1. Okay, I equals I plus 1. So we need to print from 0 to 9, and what I'm going to say is from I equals 0 until I is smaller than 10. I'm going to print that value, and each step, at the end of each step, I'm going to increase this value of I by 1. So let me just press the enter button, and there you go. We got 0 to 9 printed. Sorry, I just had dinner. Okay, so we got 0 to 9, and it's printed one after another in a sequence, and that's because I said I equals 0, and the condition is I until I is smaller than 10. It will be like at the first step it's going to be 0 is smaller than 10. It will print 0, and it will increment 0 by 1, and which I will be 1 at this end. Then it will once again go over here. 1 is smaller than 10. It will print 1, and at here 1 will become 2, or I will become 2. And oops, okay, I will be 2, and then again it will go over here, and I, which is 2, is smaller than 10. That's true. It will print 2. That's what happens here. And 2 will be incremented by 1, which will become 3, and so on. So when I is 9, it will print 9, and then it will increment I by 1, which becomes 10. And when it comes over here, 10 smaller than 10, which is not true. If you doubt it, we can say 10 is smaller than 10. The result is false. So this condition is not meant, or this condition does not provide true. Okay, until well, if this condition is true, the lines within lines that are for the while loop will be executed. So when I is 10, this condition is not meant, or it's false, and it will exit the while loop and return to the idle, or the GUI. So That's the most basic while loop I can write. It can be a little bit more complex when it is used in everyday programming, but let's stick into the simple programming for now. Okay, and okay, I'm going to look into for loops. Okay, before I start for loops, I have to tell you something about ranges. Okay, a range is something like well, it starts from a value, it increases in a step. Over here what I have is a starting with 1 and ending at 4, and it's increasing in steps of 1. Okay, so over from 1 to 2 the step is 1, from 2 to 3 the step is 1, likewise. So the way we represent this type of a range is using the range command. Say range, you can give the start value, the stop value, and the step. Okay, so when you say the stop value, remember it will stop, it will not reach this value. Okay, so I'm going to say from 1 to 5, it will be actually starting from 1 until or before it's 5. So remember what happened here, something similar. I is smaller than 10, it reaches until it's 9. Okay, so it's not going to be 4. So this is how you define a range. You don't have to have this 1 unless the increment is not 1. Okay, so let's just write a simple for statement for a in range 0 to 9, 0 to 10 in increments of 1. And what I did here is I said for, it's a keyword to say this is a for loop, and I gave a variable name that's 8, and I'm saying in range 0 to 10. So what it does is it will make a range or a list of values that is from 0 to 10, that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it will at a step it will list assign a by 1. Okay, so at first it will be 0, at the second iteration it will be, not the iteration, cycle, it will be 1, and likewise. So let's just give something similar to this, print a. Let's say print a. That's all, because we don't have to have an increment because there's no condition. What we are going to do is we are going to just iterate through a list of values, and here you have from 0 to 9 we are printing in increments of 1. So where these values came from is from this range command. This range command 0 to 10 generated values that start from 0 and end at 9. Okay, it starts from 0 and ends at 9. And at each cycle we take one of these values and assign it to a. So at first it is 0, second 1, then 2, likewise. Okay. While loops or actually for loops can use lists as their values as well. For example, I say a equals a, b, c, and d. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm making a list of values. Now I'm going to say for a in a, sorry, for val in a, I'm going to print val. So instead of a range of values, you can give a list to iterate through. So what the property that a should have is a iteratable data structure. It could even be a string. For example, I say a equals my name is Ziyan, and if I say for char in a print char. So what you have is a string is a iteratable list of chars. That means it consists of a char named m, y, space, and like this. So what it does is it takes a char at a time and prints it out into the Python GUI. So the for loop, what it does is it takes a list of values. It doesn't have a condition. It has a list of values, and it will take one at a time and execute the command that's right below it. Okay, so there are two ways you can write a for loop. You can give a list of values using a range, that's a range of numbers, and you can give a list as an input, and a list of practically anything that is iteratable. Okay, so that's about loops. And next thing what we have to talk about is conditional statement. And the condition is kind of something like the while loop. You have a condition over here. So let's look into if statement. That's the conditional statement we're going to talk. So if, else. So if do something, else do something else. So how are we going to say if? I'm going to say I equals 0 once again, and I'm going to say if I is smaller than 10. Oopsie doopsie. So make sure to have the colon always. I'm a PHP programmer and a C# programmer, and I'm not used to this type of syntax much, so that's why I'm getting a lot of errors when I do it. And I say if I is smaller than 10, I'm going to say print small. Okay, else print large. So what it says, it's going to say it's smaller. It's because I is 0, and when it comes over here, it checks what the condition is. I is smaller than 10, which is 0 is smaller than 10. It's true, it will execute this command. If not, it will execute this command. So let's see what happens if I is larger than 10. So I'm going to say I equals 20, and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I'm going to, okay, if you're wondering how I got this command, lines of code without anything, what you have to do is you have to go to where the line starts and press the enter button, and it'll, well, kind of get repeated. So it's like copying and pasting, only a bit easier. So what I'm going to say is I is 20, and when it comes over here, this condition should be false, and it should print large. So it did print large. That's because the condition, the if condition, was false. It didn't go through this command, rather it went through the else and printed large. Okay, so that's about if statements. It's as simple as a if statement you'll use in natural languages. If something, do this, else do something else. Okay, and let's just combine the while loop with the if statement and see what we can do with it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say while okay, I'm going to say I equals 0 while, okay, I'm going to define a list as well. List, my list equals A, B, C, and D. Okay, so I got a list of letters, that's A, B, C, D. What I'm going to say is while while 1, okay, no, while I is smaller than length, okay, len my list. I didn't discuss this len command before. What len does is it tells the length of an object. For example, my list has 4 elements, it will say 4. If I enter a string, it will enter the number of characters it has. What it does is it gives the length of an object, okay, something simple. And what I'm going to say is while I is smaller than the length of my list, okay, I'm going to check if my list I equals C, oops, forgot a colon, if equals C, print found C, okay. And I'm going to say break. The break command will also, I'll just explain in a while. And else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print I, my list I, okay. So I believe I explained to you in a previous video that we can access a list element by giving its index. So the index of A is 0, B is 1, C is 2, and D is 3. So what I'm telling is from I equals 0 and until it is smaller than 4, which is the maximum value I can take is 3. Okay, that's what we want because we have 0, 1, 2, 3. What we need is a range of values this function, a range of values um, that will allow us to access these indexes of this list. Okay, while I is smaller than length of my list, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if the character C is in the list, and if it's found, I'm going to print a value that's found C, and then I'm going to break. Okay, break is like this. If you're about to iterate through this like 100 times, and in the 50th time you come across this break, it will break the loop. Simple. It's going to break the loop and nothing else is going to happen. Otherwise, if I'm not going to have this break, what it will do is it will continuously loop through. It will say found C and it will loop through. So let's just see what happens. I also have to add a increment. I'm going to say I equals I plus 1. Okay, otherwise this is going to be in an infinite loop. And let's just execute it to see. It says A, B, and found C. How did it happen? Over here we have a list named A, B, C, D. Okay, 4 values, indexes starting from 0, 1, 2, and 3. And over here we say while I is smaller than length of my list, that means the range of values it's going to get is from 0 to 3. Okay, 0 to 3, the same as the indexes of my list. That is the whole purpose of generating these values. So this and this line of code was written purposefully with the purpose to generate the indexes of my list so we can access each element. Okay, and over here I'm going to check if the list element at index I, so at first it's 0, if it's C, it is not. So what it will do is it will jump to the else statement and execute its line of code. So what it will do is it just prints A. Okay, and in the second step it will be B, and again it will print B because this is not C. And in the third iteration or third cycle, what it will do is it will check with this, and if it's true my list I, that is my list 2 is equal to C, and it will print found C, and it will come over here, the break statement. The break statement breaks the loop, and the loop ends from there onwards, so we don't have anything more than found C. Okay, and just let's see what happens if we don't have the break statement. I'm going to move over here where the while statement. I'm going to press enter, so all that code in this line will be available for me once again. I'm going to just comment this break, okay, for you to know this is a break statement, breaks a loop. Okay, I'm just going to see what happens. Okay, wait, alright, I didn't make I equals 0, I had to do it because in the previous program it incremented the value of 5. So I'm going to say this once again, and okay. Again over here we have 4 values A, B, C, D, and I is equal to 0 at the first step, and 0 is smaller than 3 or 4 actually. 0 is smaller than 4. It will check for the first character. If it's C, it's not. What it will do is it will print that value, it's A. Then it will print B the same way, and when it's the when I is equal to 2, my list 2 will be C. It will say found C. Okay, that's over here. And when I equals 3, the value is D, which this condition does not meet, so it will jump to the else statement and print D. Okay, so we have 4 prints over here, that's A, B, found C, and D. And if we go back up, what we have is A, B, and found C. Okay, the difference is because of this break statement, which is not here. We have just commented it. So as again once I said, when you're in a loop, that can be a for loop or a while loop, you can ask the loop to break by using the break statement. If this was here, once it reached the break statement, the loop will end. Okay, so the same thing can be done for the for loop as well. For example, for val in my list, okay, print, okay, I'm going to say if val equals C, print found C, okay, else print val. Okay, so it should be something similar to this, because what we're saying is we're going to take the list of values from my list, and for each of this value we are going to check if it's C. If it's C, we are going to print C, that is what happens over here, and else we are going to just print the value. Okay, so as above, you can use the break statement once again. Okay, you can say once you find C, you have to break. So I'm going to say break, and let's see what happens. What it does is, at first the value is A, it's not true, it will print A. Then the value is B, it will again print B, and in the third iteration, in the third round, the value is C, it will say found C by executing this line of code, and thereafter it will jump to this break statement and the loop will end. Okay, still there's a value in the list, that is D, but it will not continue to print it because the loop has ended over here. So the break statement is used to break a loop. Okay, once you reach the break statement, the loop will end, and if that's all you have in the program, it will terminate, and that's what has happened over here. Okay, so I had a sip of water. Um, okay, that's about list, actually the for loop, the while loop, and the if statement.